The third plane briefly stopped in Paris, but then headed to Brussels. Our sources understand talks could be held with the EU and NATO. AlJazeera's Alan Fisher is in Brussels.
The takeoff of the three planes was first reported on Twitter. That sent everyone scrambling to find out who was on board and where they were going. It's now become clear that one touched down in Cairo, one went on to Portugal so that the person on board that flight can have discussions with the Portuguese foreign minister, and a third flight, we're told, went to Paris and then on to Brussels. Certainly the suggestion that has been made is that these talks with the Libyans were suggested in the first instance by the White House. So why Brussels? Well, over the next 48 hours, there are two very important meetings going to get underway here. First of all, on Thursday, we have NATO, the world's strongest military alliance. Libya was always going to be top of the agenda. We're hearing from NATO that a number of scenarios have been played out, essentially. They're putting things in place to allow the political decision to be made on what they do next with Libya. And of course, a no-fly zone is something that a number of countries have been pushing for. And then there is a meeting of EU leaders on Friday as well. What we're likely to see there are the sanctions that have been imposed by a number of countries against the Gaddafi regime be extended right across Europe. So such as the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which owns shares in a number of companies across Europe, owns properties across Europe, runs bank accounts for the Gaddafi family. All of those will be frozen. So we're seeing Muammar Gaddafi claiming substantial victories militarily in Libya at the moment, but also it now looks as if there's a diplomatic offensive underway to speak to the African Union, the EU and NATO. What will develop will become clear, hopefully, within the next 48 hours. But it certainly is a very interesting development, and Brussels here, right at the heart of what's going to happen.
Well, meanwhile, Europe's top foreign policy chief is calling on the world to turn its back on Muammar al-Gaddafi. Catherine Ashton says it's time to send him back into the cold. NATO has told Al Jazeera it has no plans to intervene, but is preparing for all eventualities. Barnaby Phillips has the details.
A no-fly zone over Libya's skies, enforced above all by America's military might. It sounds simple. Fighter jets, monitoring or AWACS aircraft, and electronic surveillance to stop the Libyan Air Force from bombing rebel forces or civilians. In practice, it may not be so simple.
An abstract no-fly zone, when you're just simply not allowing military aircraft to not pass through, that doesn't actually help prevent bloodshed on the ground. So a no-fly zone without it being coupled by military strikes is quite futile.
Information on Libya's air defences is hard to come by, but according to recent research by one analyst, there are some 30 surface-to-air missile sites, most on the heavily populated coast. So how do you hit them without risking civilian casualties? And what about the history of these operations? During the first Gulf War, a no-fly zone was created in northern Iraq. Later, it was extended to the south. It helped protect Kurdish and Shia populations from Saddam Hussein's air force. Then a no-fly zone was established in Bosnia. It restricted Serbian forces, but didn't prevent the killing of 8,000 people in the Srebrenica massacre. There are political as well as practical problems. At the UN, Russia and China are wary of deeper involvement, whilst after the fiasco of the Iraq War, some Western military planners are cautious.
NATO is definitely not looking to intervene in Libya. We have asked our military to conduct necessary planning to be prepared for all eventualities, but we have not taken any operational decision.
Western countries will want to know how much support there is for a no-fly zone in the Arab world, and defence chiefs will be warning that even a supposedly limited operation can have unpredictable consequences. Barnaby Phillips, Al Jazeera.
Egyptian authorities say 13 people were killed in Tuesday night's clashes between Muslims and Christians in Cairo. 140 were wounded. The violence has prompted further protests by Coptic Christians in Egypt's capital. Well, more than 1,000 Copts were demonstrating against the torching of a church when the violence broke out. The fighting has broken out in Cairo's Tahrir, or Liberation Square 2. That's the centre of last month's mass protest that triggered the country's revolution. Protesters have remained camped in the square to demand swift political reform. They say armed supporters of the ousted President Hosni Mubarak stormed the area on Wednesday, carrying knives, machetes and whips. They also say there were no police on hand to stop the violence. Egypt's opposition leader, meanwhile, and Nobel laureate Mohammed al-Baradei has confirmed he will run for president in elections later this year. He'll be up against the outgoing Arab League chief Amr Moussa.
I intend to run for elections as soon as the door for voting is open. I will work from now, and it is my intention to run for office.
More announcements in North Africa. Morocco's King Mohammed VI making a rare national address on state television. Well, he announced what he calls comprehensive constitutional reform, with a commission to report back to him by June. Well, thousands of Moroccans rallied last month, demanding limits on the king's powers, and several smaller protests have followed.
I am addressing my people today because I feel the gravity of the situation and the developments happening to our democratic system. I also want to talk about a review of our constitution and the reforms that we're planning to introduce. We're going to ask for a referendum on the constitution. We have been discussing a lot of constitutional reviews since we ascended to the throne.
Well, coming up after the break, as unrest spreads in the Middle East, fears of repression growing in Iraq. And why sorry seems to be a hard word to say in the Philippines. Those stories coming up.
As the dry condition extends over Amritsar, we'll find the right flavor to tempt your palate.
Hello again. Well, across the United States, we have seen quite a bit of activity, especially up towards Canada. We're talking Quebec, New Brunswick, as well as Prince Edward Island. We saw some freezing rain there over the last couple of days. Now another system is making its way up towards the north. We're looking at it right here along the eastern seaboard, so it's going to be bringing some more snow into those parts of Canada along the St. Lawrence Seaway, but all the way down the east coast from New York, Washington, Atlanta, all the way down to Miami. Heavy rain showers are going to be a problem. The central part of the United States, though, looking quite nice and warm. Denver up to 20 degrees, so very warm for them. Up to the northwest, though, more snow for Vancouver, rainy for Seattle, as well as possibly some rain showers coming into San Francisco's forecast. As we make our way down towards South America, very heavy rain showers right here across this band, all the way from Rio de Janeiro, all the way inland, so localized flooding could be a problem there, as well as the northern sections of Peru. We are looking at some very heavy rain showers into their forecast. And Bolivia has more rain coming to La Paz over the next couple days. Of course, that could mean more landslides as well as mudslides into their forecast. And very quickly over towards Europe, we are looking at some very heavy rain showers pushing into Turkey. That is also going to mean also heavy snow showers for them.
Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
Leaders are remembered,